the younger generation being able to have these types of conversations with women who are older, and our real desire to not have to go through the same things that they went through in the same type of way, that hopefully there can be some generational progress.
Hello, and welcome back to Work is Third. I'm your host, Dawn Hunter, and I'm so glad you're here. Today, I'm joined by the host of the Raised by Her podcast, a mother-daughter duo exploring womanhood, identity, and the lessons that pass between generations. In our conversation, we talk about the power of storytelling, the importance of boundaries, and why honest conversations about health, mentorship, and life experience matter so much. I'm so glad I was able to be part of this multi-generational conversation. Let's listen in. Hello, Ronita and Donica, and welcome to Work is Third.
Hello. Nice to be here.
So glad you're here. I'm really glad that we connected and looking forward to the conversation. And to kick us off, could each of you share a word to describe how you're doing today?
I'm doing great, Dawn. I feel good. I feel energized. The sun is shining. It's a beautiful fall day. So I'm ready to go.
Okay. I like that. Feeling great. Feeling good.
I'm a little exhausted, to be honest. When I look at my week, today was the busiest day. And so I'm like, okay, just 2 or 3 more things, and then I can hit the bed, maybe, with my laptop. So that's kind of how I'm feeling on a Wednesday. Super excited to wake up tomorrow because my week's going to slow down a little bit.
I can relate. I mentioned before we actually hit record that today I scheduled to be a little bit more full than normal. And I always later say I regret that because it feels so busy. But tomorrow is an off day, not an off day, a non-performance day, as I like to call it.
What do you do on your non-performance days?
Well, I try to not get dressed, like no hair, no makeup, just chill at home in comfy clothes and work in my home office with no interruptions other than walking my dog.
I mean, that sounds like the ideal work day, honestly. I love that.
Yes. Do y'all build in non-performance days as well?
Non-performance days is probably not the way that I would describe it, but there are days when I intentionally decide that I am going to stay home and work or stay home and just do research. So I will define what it is I might want to accomplish in a given day.
Yeah, I like that. And I like non-performance days is probably not the best way to describe it, or even like recovery days or, self-improvement days, whatever. Yeah. Donica, what about you?
I don't schedule them, but occasionally they pop up on my calendar and I'm like, oh, I do exactly what you talked about you doing today, Dawn, in terms of booking back to back with the hope that when I look at my week, there's one day that looks a little less crazy than another day. And then I could be a little bit more at rest. And then to your point, even better if I don't have to put on makeup and do my hair and can just work in a sweatsuit, in the house.
Yeah. I don't have enough of those days. Definitely want to get in the habit of doing more of that. But I am curious because the reason that we connected is that you have the Raised by Her podcast that you do together. And I'm curious about how you find balance doing that, and tell us a little bit more about Raised by Her.
I'm going to let you start, Donica.
Okay. I will start by talking about Raised by Her is a mother-daughter podcast talking about all things womanhood and identity and what we go through intergenerationally from the perspective of a mother and also a boomer, if you will, and then the perspective of a daughter and a millennial. And so we tackle all things identity, work, relationships, friendships, everything that we deal with in our lives, but do so from an intergenerational perspective, as well as a mother-daughter perspective as we kind of tackle all these things together. It's been really, really cool experience.
Ronita, how long have you all been doing the podcast?
About 3 months now. Dawn, we have talked about it for a number of years. We actually began talking about it during the pandemic. We were in 2 separate cities at that particular time, and we wanted to be able to share what was really going on in our lives with the details and the specifics. And our conversations were getting longer and longer. And we said, this might be kind of nice to do a podcast at some point. Not thinking that it would take a few years, but now is the right time.
I'm a believer in things happen when they are meant to happen.
Agreed. Absolutely.
I'm imagining that you had a really strong mother-daughter relationship before going into the podcast, but I don't want to make that assumption. So, what was that like, and how did you arrive at wanting to do this work together?
I think that the beginning of me wanting to do this is understanding my daughter as a grown woman, being able to really listen to her perspectives and how she was dealing with the world and how things were kind of impacting her life as we were going through the pandemic, and understanding that change was occurring, things we knew about and things that we did not know about. And I was so impressed by how she was handling the unexpected. And I just thought, you know what? I did a pretty good job. Thank you, Lord. Thank you for raising a young woman who appears to be able to handle all these things that are coming at her, coming at all of us in the world of the unexpected. If people remember back to the way it was, we didn't know how to deal with a pandemic as a nation, and we're getting mixed messages. And yet I was learning from my daughter, and I thought this would be really nice to share with the rest of the world, kind of this kind of scenario.
Donica, what would you add to that?
Yeah, from my perspective, you were spot on. We do have and have had a really strong relationship, and I really look at that as a privilege. And when I looked beyond just my own experience and have been having lots of conversations within my network, my broader peer group, I wanted them to also, if possible, be able to have the opportunity to have the wisdom imparted on them as they navigate the different things they're going through in their lives. It's great to have mother daughter, but you can find a mother figure anywhere. And it's been so helpful for me as I've navigated my life to be able to call her and ask her anything, because she's been through it 10 times over, and get that advice. And so we've gotten such a great response from our immediate network that it was actually suggested to us. It took us a while to get there, but suggested to us that we spread our word, if you will, more broadly, and that more people could benefit from the lessons. Also, just seeing a healthy relationship, and also a focus on not just surviving, but thriving, and knowing that it's absolutely possible as a woman.
Yes, that is a huge theme on this show is thriving. Like, we're not just making it through, we're thriving, we're joyful, we're living our best lives. We might be challenged sometimes, but we're trying to thrive in everything that we do. So what does that look like for you? How do you thrive in addition to the podcast? What are you doing? What are some practices that you do to help you thrive?
I believe that it has to be intentional when you go through the things for you day to day. So personally, I've been meditating for many years. I am in my mid 70s. And so at this particular time in my life, what I want to do is to make sure that I am continuing to have good practices for healthy living, mentally and physically. So it's very important for me to understand that quiet time is necessary. It's very important for me to understand that being intentional about what I do day to day, week to week, sometimes moment by moment, can help to bring not only peace and calmness, but also that you mentioned joy, Don. Joy is something that I embrace. And even during challenging times, we have to be able to find something that is good and positive, and how we go about dealing with it. So self-care is very important to me and also to my daughter.
Self care is one of my favorite things.
What does your self-care look like?
Oh, it varies. So, meditation is something that I was fortunate enough to be introduced to early. And so that's helpful. Also, just taking walks is helpful. And then also, I'm not going to lie, like, I love a spa. Like, if I can incorporate spa days often into my schedule, that is a successful month, week, day for me, for sure.
Okay, so you both mentioned meditation. I also love a good spa day. Um, I struggle with meditation. So this has come up on some episodes that other guests who meditate. I have a challenge being still, and I could take a nap with no problem, but meditating is rough. So how did you get for both of you? How did you get into that practice of meditating?
For me, it was something that was introduced to me first at my church. And what the minister would talk about is getting quiet with God and understanding that praying is one thing, that is a conversation with God. But also, what about a conversation with yourself about that which is occurring at the moment? So, practicing deep breathing is so very important, making sure that one understands how important it is to take deep breaths and to calm yourself and to quiet yourself. Some people meditate using a mantra. Some people meditate with music in the background. Some people just have to have the quiet moments. They tell you when you start out, don't make it a long period of time. Just make sure that it is, you can start out with 5 minutes or you can go to 10 minutes, but make sure what you're trying to do is, I call it getting rid of the monkey brain, where it was just jumping, 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 and just taking a moment. I also think having a set time is very important, a time when you want to have a quiet moment. It might be the first thing in the morning, it might be the last thing at night. It could be midday when things are really crazy, but having a set time and coming up with a practice that works for you, I think is really good.
Monica, how about you? How did you get into meditation?
Probably from watching folks within my household do it. Mine is less tied to a religion or an institution, and more so tied to the benefits that I see when I am able to stay still. Like you, it's a challenge for me. Even still, even after all these years, I still cannot do it like my mother does it for hours. I can do it for minutes, and also in different ways. Sometimes I listen to music, sometimes I listen to a guided meditation, and then sometimes I can just kind of go silent or be out in nature. But it's tied to the benefits that I see in terms of my ability to center myself, and then also my ability to innovate and generate ideas. Like, my best ideas sometimes come from when I'm not thinking about whatever it is that's on my mind at all. It just comes from when I'm on a walk, or even if I'm in the shower, just in these moments where it can be, when one might think they're not thinking about anything at all, that I guess the brain just lights up and amazing ideas can come from that.
Well, it's a great reminder because when our minds are free of clutter, we're more creative. And I actually have a morning journaling practice, and I find that I have a lot of ideas come to me in that moment. So I'm not thinking, I get up, I get my cup of coffee, and I journal. And it has been such a great exercise in like getting rid of all the clutter in my mind. And then as I do that, sometimes new creative ideas come up. And I really, really love that time in the mornings. And now I'm so used to it, but also love it so much. I never want to give that up. I want to get up every morning and drink coffee and journal.
But that's great because you're intentionally doing something for you, something that works for you, and also something that gives your mind a rest from all of the clutter and everything else going on. So good for you.
A great way to start your day, for sure.
Well, it's funny because Renita, you said you have to set a time for it. And I was like, I don't like to set times for things. I like my freedom. But I do actually have a time in the morning. I get up at the same time every morning and do this journaling. So I guess I am doing it without even thinking about it.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
So I want to go back to Raised by Her because, Donica, I believe you said that you've been having this really great impact and the response has been really great. So I'm curious about what is coming up. What are some of the issues that come up? How are people navigating them? Like, what has been surprising to you as you've gone through the conversations on this show?
I don't know that it's been a surprise, but I think it's so timely that we're having this conversation, because one of the pieces of feedback that we just got was like, you guys talk about self-care all the time. And I'm like, yes, we do, because it's very much a part of our lives. And here is why. And here is how we do it, with a lot of intentionality, because we all have a lot on our plates. So we talk a lot about self-care and have gotten feedback about that. We also talk a lot about the importance of maintaining your health, if possible, and just paying attention. We both have very busy careers, and at different points in our careers, we have not focused on our health and have had repercussions from that. And so we're very honest about our stories. And then, as you may know, having your own podcast, your own vulnerability then allows others to share their stories. And so some pretty amazing stories have come from some pretty amazing women, and talking about how they were able to get through their own health challenges.
I think it's important to be able to be honest about how you're feeling, honest communicating with yourself and others about how you've gone through whatever it is that you are facing at a given time. To me, I try very hard to say, okay, what is the meaning behind this? What is the lesson that I've learned? I don't like making the same mistakes twice, but we are all going to make mistakes. I've learned some of my best lessons by making mistakes. So now being able to communicate how you got through it so you could get to whatever it is the next thing that is coming up is important as well.
Yeah, and if I could just piggyback off of that, one of the things that has come up as well is the importance of the younger generation being able to have these types of conversations with women who are older, and our real desire to not have to go through the same things that they went through in the same type of way, that hopefully there can be some generational progress. And but that's only possible if we know, if we're able to have honest conversations. And there are no secrets, and we can really just kind of push through together. So that's another thing that we talk about a lot, that is very intergenerational, and sometimes it's well received, but it's, I think this generation has the privilege of being able to ask some of those questions of our older generations, and that wasn't always the case.
Right. And it's beautiful to be able to create the space for these conversations. I think we keep doing it and we keep having that conversation until it's normalized, until we're not talking about self-care because we have to advocate for it, but because it's just a way of life. Right. And we can only do that if we keep having these conversations.
Yeah, agreed.
I
Yeah.
think self-care is important, and also health is important. Donica mentioned that we also have talked about some of our health challenges. And so, I mean, stress is real. It is a part of life. So how you get through that, and then what kind of impact does it have on your life day to day? If you're not feeling your best, if you are not energetic at a given time, you can't go through the kind of day that you said that you're having today with the kind of success that you need to. But if you don't take care of yourself over a period of time, we know it catches up with you, and your immune system is compromised, and then something will happen, whether it's a cold, a head cold, whether it's a flu, or whether it's something that really magnifies into something that is a lot more challenging for one. So it is important to communicate and to remind ourselves and others in our lives of being healthy and what that means.
I appreciate the focus on health, as someone who works in the public health space and has for a long time. And I think a lot about my own health as well. And I remember a time right before COVID, I was in a very stressful job and I started having headaches. And me, I was convinced I had a brain tumor. I'm a Virgo. And so I sometimes go there with a hypochondriac, kind of tendencies. But I was having headaches and I was not sleeping well. And I had all these really negative things going on. Like my body just didn't feel great. It was all stress related. And it was this getting out of that situation that I was in, relieve the symptoms. But then also it was like, it's not enough to get out of the situation. You have to do these other things to heal yourself and take care of yourself. I'm curious if you're willing to share what those health experiences were for you that were kind of a turning point.
We actually did a podcast talking about this. Fibroids was something that occurred. It's something that happens to all women, but particularly African American women. And I went through a period of time where I had fibroids and they had developed. And my mother, who was very, very interested in being able to approach life at a certain point in her age from a holistic, healthy perspective. And so she began to talk to me about what I should do to be able to get rid of the fibroids, and some practices that she learned that were natural and holistic. And actually, I did that. Because I already meditated before, I was able to really focus mentally on good health and to have a ritual and a routine that I went through for many months. And I was able to shrink the fibroids and then to get rid of them. They didn't stay away, however, because I went back to my old work habits. And they ended up occurring again. But my OBGYN said, I've never seen this before. I'm looking and I don't see or feel any fibroids anymore. And she said, what did you do? And I explained the process and the routine. I then shared this with Donica, and then years later, she had a situation. And Donica, you can share your own story, but that's just one example of how my mother, I was raised by her, was able to handle these challenges. And then I was able to pass this down to my daughter as well.
Pass it down in every way. Yeah, because at a particular high stress moment in my life, I realized that I had developed fibroids as well. And I was busy at the time, and I asked my OBGYN, I was like, what does this mean? And so they were like, well, you can do this, or you can do nothing. And I was like, great, let's do nothing because I'm too busy with everything else. Then fast forward a few years, I saw like a lump in my stomach, and I was like, oh my God, this does not seem like something I can ignore. And so when I went back to a different OBGYN, and they took a look, and the fibroids had grown. And so they then grew to a point where if I could have left them in, but I didn't want, nobody wants a lumpy situation. So I ended up having them taken out. Which is a crazy surgery to go through. But when I started talking about my experience with other women, they were like, oh yeah, I had that. Oh yeah, I had that. Oh yeah, I went through that. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? I mean, I'm talking like at least 70% of the women who I talked to on a regular basis, I had no idea. And they had gone through something similar at some point. And I was like, this is so widespread, but why isn't anybody talking about this? Had I known years ago that it could actually get to this point, maybe I would have done something differently. So that's just an example of the power and the importance of being able to be honest about your experience, and then find a way to be comfortable to share it more broadly, because all you can do is help people.
I appreciate both of you sharing your story, and I'm curious because my mom is in her 70s, 72 this year. I'm a Gen Xer. I call myself an Xennial. I'm like right on the edge there. My brother's a millennial. But I'm in perimenopause, and I just recently recorded an episode with a perimenopause expert. And one of the things that we talked about was this concept of, as women, not having these conversations with each other, and not having this space to learn from the people who came before, the women who came before us. Because I'm like, so many things that I'm going through now, nobody told me about. I'm like, why do I have to be on TikTok or Instagram to be finding these things out?
Right? That's real.
Yeah.
And then it's like, is that really the best source of information? Like, how can I? Yeah. It's a whole thing for sure.
I think the right questions to ask perhaps are what we're missing sometimes. Because if you don't know exactly what it is, or if you hear it and you don't know exactly then what the next question is to ask or how to go about asking it, I think that's part of the challenge in terms of communicating. And when I shared with Donica my experience, and then I said her grandmother, my mother, had an experience at a particular time with something with another situation. And she goes, really? She said, I didn't know that. And I thought the question hadn't come up, but the fact that I'm now telling her about it, and it was sort of late in the process. Why didn't I tell her earlier? Because it was an ectopic pregnancy. And so this is when you're pregnant outside the uterus, and then there are all kind of dangers and problems when that happens, when that occurs. And so I thought, I guess I had not had a conversation with her about an ectopic pregnancy. And her grandmother had that, and I had that. So it is important to know what questions to ask, and then also what to share. You don't want to scare your child, but you also want to talk about the family history and things that have occurred.
Now, I'm curious from both of you, because some folks don't have the greatest relationship with their mom. And Donica, you mentioned having a mother figure in your life. How can we create those relationships where we have that safe person to go to ask these questions when we know what to ask, or when we're curious, or when something's going on? I think sometimes, like, we default in the way that we friend people and then we would cultivate relationships. But what are some intentional ways that we can get over that barrier of maybe like we didn't have the best relationship with our mom, but we have a mother figure, or we need a mother figure, and how do we cultivate that relationship?
So for me, it's looked like intentionally seeking out mentors and sponsors in a workplace. That's usually kind of where my mind goes. And if I'm able to sit down and have lunch with somebody or coffee with somebody, and there is a good vibe, then I cultivate it from there. But usually for me, it starts professional, and then, as we know, like our personal and professional blend in so many different ways. And so I've sought out mentorship and sponsorship, and then grown those relationships for them to be able to support me in all the other ways more broadly.
I think for those individuals that have actually come to me and either ask for advice or ask me, have I gone through whatever kind of experience is that generally she, but sometimes he, happened to be going through at that particular time, I found myself to be a really good listener, and to be able to say to them, okay, what have you learned from this experience? What do you think the outcome should be? How are you going to change it so it doesn't happen the same way? So from the listening skills and then the questioning, because it truly is not my way, it becomes the way that you want to be able to handle certain circumstances in the foreseeable future. And I think you get that kind of a relationship through trust, through honesty, and also through not being fearful that you're going to be judged. Because a lot of times I believe people don't share because they think, oh, what are they going to think of me? Or, oh, if I say that to my boss or to my friend, they'll think less of me. That's not the case when you're communicating with a person who genuinely cares about you and about your future.
Do you think that it's important to reach out? You asked about really specific steps about how to cultivate those types of relationships, and I would say just reach out. You never know who's going to say yes, and if folks say no, then you are in the exact spot you were previously, and it really doesn't matter. But if they say yes, you might have the opportunity for a really amazing budding relationship. So just get over the fear, and just reach out and see what happens.
I love that, Donica, you said we can reach out, right? And then Ronita, you're a beautiful compliment to that, because you're like, we can also be those women to other women, which I love, because I'm thinking like, yeah, I think honestly, like the first time I talked to someone about having hot flashes, and then somebody else was like, oh, girl, me too, right? And then I was like, oh, I can talk to someone about this because it's terrible and is ruining my day.
I have a sister-in-law that, talking about hot flashes, she would be walking around and she said, I'm having my own personal summer. And she would be going through this. And I'd say, I don't even understand that. And she goes, you will one day. And so I told her many years later, I said, it happened. She said, well, yes, because if you live long enough and if you're healthy, even in those states, it is going to occur. And so I thought, I'm glad she told me about that, because actually my mother did not have hot flashes. She didn't experience life in that way.
Can I say, I'm a part of quite a few different organizations and groups, some focused on mentorship. And one of my really amazing mentors, who's much, much further along in her career, has done an amazing thing with a couple of us from around the country, and has opened up her network of support to us. And so at the beginning of the year, it's very much, what is it that you all need? What is it you want? And then we meet monthly, but we could talk about all things. And so when healthcare came up, she brought on her OBGYN to come talk to us about any questions we had, about perimenopause or menopause or fibroids or whatever. When we had questions about money, she brought on her financial advisor, and they did a presentation for us about financial literacy for where we are in our careers and where we could potentially go. When folks had different family issues, she brought in her therapist. And so I wanted to share that, because mentorship and sponsorship can look so many different ways. But if women are looking for ways that they can support the younger generation, that can be one way that I personally have found to be really, really helpful. And then actually earlier this week, I had a college student reach out to me who's interested in, I do public affairs. She was interested in getting into politics and lobbying, and all she had to do was reach out. all she had to do was reach out. She was like, "Oh my gosh, Donica, you're connecting me to all these resources and everything that I didn't even know existed." But all I had to know is what is it that she wanted. And then, of course, I'm more than happy to help her. And she's going to go far. And I'm so excited for her. And I truly believe that that's the experience most often when folks just reach out.
Curious, Ronita, what does networking and what does connection look like for you being in an older generation? I hear a lot about mentorship and sponsorship, right? And like having these relationships when we're new in the workforce or mid-career, but I'm curious about how that evolves over time.
Well, it evolves over time based upon not only what you are willing to share, but what kinds of experiences that you have had that you have now learned from so that you can continue growing. My friend base is made up of, it's multi-generational. And so I'm learning from the younger generation. I'm willing to continue to grow. And so that means that my knowledge base is, I'm hoping, expanding, but also being able to understand something about what I need to be able to navigate in the world today, which is changing so much. You said your mother was in her 70s. So I know that she is experiencing maybe culture shock in terms of technology and in terms of just how the world communicates on a 24-hour a day basis with these little bitty devices. Even when you go someplace and you are communicating with someone, is it possible to be able to put the phone aside, to put it down so that we can look face to face and be able to share the conversation and not to have it interrupting you on a continuous basis? So my network grows from the standpoint that I reach out to learn, to share, and I'm also active with organizations. Staying active and being active and still being able and willing to contribute is something that I think is very important. Even though I'm retired professionally, I still do consulting work. I still go to conferences. I still share. I'm still learning from this whole experience of podcasting. So it's really being able to open yourself up to the possibilities of the world, or as Shonda Rhimes said, let's just say yes.
Let's just say yes. That was the first book my book club read this past January. Yeah.
Did you do it? Are you in your midst of a year of yes?
Hey, I'm not. I don't know if I'm doing a year of
Wait a
yes.
minute,
I mean, maybe I
excuse me.
am.
You're hesitating, Dawn.
Yeah, right.
It's either yes or no. Are we saying yes?
I think this whole year, actually, also as a newer podcaster, this whole year is a year of yes, because I spent more than 20 years in public service. I worked for the government, or I've worked for nonprofits or philanthropy. And so this whole shift right now to consulting, to doing the podcast is a major kind of yes for me, like taking a huge leap of faith and just saying, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I feel called to. But I feel so much better and so much more aligned that I'm like, yeah, I guess that's a year of yes, a yes to new experiences.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, I love that, and it's so I didn't read her book in its entirety, but I started and I was like, okay, I get the gist. And I was like, a year is a long time to say yes to everything. I was like, let me give it a week. I'll say yes for a week, and then I'll cherry pick. I can cherry pick I will say yes more often for the year. But yes to every single thing. I can relate to the hesitation, because it's like, now wait, let's not overindulge.
Right. Well, I want to go back, Ronita, because you were talking about phones, and it was so funny because I was at an event in my city recently, an in-person event, and I was sitting next to a woman who is older. I don't remember how old she is. She's just one of my older colleagues, and her phone was going off. And this is a speaking event, and she's like right next to me. We're like 4 rows back from the stage. And I was just like tapping her on the shoulder. I'm just like, your phone. And she did nothing about it. And it was so funny because I talked to her afterward, and she said, I thought I turned my phone off. Apparently I did not. And there was nothing I could do about it at that point. And
Wow.
she was just very matter of fact about it. And I
Wait,
was
the
like,
ringer was going off?
yes, the ringer was going off. Her phone was ringing, and she did nothing about it.
Okay.
And it was so funny because You make me think, like, one of the things I love about my mom is that she's always been, what do you call, like, the early adopters of technology. So we always had the video games when they first came out, the newest phone, the whatever, like, that was always my mom, and so I've always appreciated that about her. But my mother-in-law, she has a cell phone because that's how she can communicate with us, like, we have a group text, but, like, I don't think she would have a cell phone if she didn't have to have one. She would just have a house phone. So, like, our mothers are my husband's mother and my mother, very different. Yeah.
I think that it really requires technology requires us to learn something new on an ongoing basis. And so, what you're saying is your mother is willing to stretch herself and to learn something new. I had to get, I think, more connected to technology because I was in broadcasting and it was necessary for me to not only know the latest equipment, but also to be able to communicate with my staff and the other individuals that I was working with, and the responsibility to make sure that we were state of the art. So that was very important at a particular time.
Can I want to ask you a question. Can I ask a question too? I do. Because I think it'd be helpful for folks to hear about how difficult maybe it has been for you to adopt technology, and then also the benefits that you have seen versus your peers who may or may not have adopted it, and how that, from your perspective, either positively or negatively impacts their life. I know how I feel about it from my perspective, but I think it's really powerful coming from, I mean, because you're like living it.
I am. I'm living it. And I'm living it in a way today that is actually different than I had to live it before. Dawn, I used to own radio stations, and I actually built a radio station from the ground up. So during that time, and this was in the early 90s. So in that time, during that time, I was learning a lot. I'm a curious person, and I want to know about as many things as I possibly can. So working with my engineers and working with the contractors and all the things that one would need to know in order to build a broadcast facility was very important to me. We had to stay on top of technology. So that was a part of my DNA. I also had a staff of individuals and I had an assistant. And so I didn't have to learn everything on the computer that it is now required for me to know, because I always had someone that would help me or someone who was doing it. So I didn't have to type up the reports. And so I knew how to do certain things. And I began to really compare how I navigated the world many, many years ago, how I navigated the world when I was no longer involved in broadcasting, and how I have to navigate the world now when I'm required to do just about everything, because I don't have an assistant now. I don't have a staff now that really can do things in the way that I had them before. So I think, to Donica's point, it's been necessary for the growth process. It also has been somewhat frustrating because if you don't do something over and over and over again, you may learn it, but then you forget it because you're not using it day to day, week to week. And so I find it to be challenging on the one hand, but I don't give up. I just think that there must be an easier way that I can remember all these 10 steps to go through something from one point to another point. I actually, getting on the podcast today, this was a new format or a new platform for me. And so I'm going through the steps, and I got there and Donica said, "There you are." And that's good. And then she said, "Oh, mommy, you need to change something." And my first thought was, uh-oh, will I be able to come back through and get back to where I was? Because I had to go through all of these different steps. I did. I made it. So it just goes to show you, you have to keep trying, and don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of technology.
Well, and Donica, what about the flip side of that then? As someone, well, as a millennial and as a honorary millennial myself, um, we didn't grow up with technology in the way that the like Gen Z folks did, but it certainly was more a part of our lives. What about you, like, and how technology exists in your life now? And do you have like separation between like, I don't need technology, or you were very technology, like it's integrated into your life?
Really good question. I call myself an elder millennial. So I'm on the older side as as well. So my digital literacy had to skyrocket, quite frankly, when I got married. I am married to a man who loves all things technology, and his expectation is that everybody around him operate
Everybody,
right.
everybody,
Mother-in-laws included,
mother-in-laws included. Yes.
um, operate at his level, because from his perspective, it's easier, and it is easier for him. You know, he's and when I say like his ex, like he's turned our house into a smart house. I have to have fights with my smart. It's Dawn. It's a whole thing. Okay. I would say prior to my relationship with my husband, I was digitally literate to the degree that it was necessary, but certainly not to the degree that I am now. But it's been a rapid pace of learning. And I think my mother mentioned it's continuous learning. I think the statistics and facts say that there has been more change in the past 20 years than there has been in the past 150 years. The world is moving fast, and it's just moving faster. And a lot of that has to do with technology and our digital tools. And so I now that I've, been married for 10 years, have gone through a decade of it being kind of forced on me, I really do recognize the power in being digitally literate and the power of technology in our lives, because I can also see a massive gap from the people that utilize it and those that don't. And the gap has just grown further and further and further. So I will say I'm probably on a pretty good trajectory, but it continues to be an ongoing learning process. And I just had to get comfortable with that being a part of my ongoing learning.
I love this story because I think my husband and I are the reverse of you and your husband. So we're both, I think, very digitally literate, but I love technology. I love the way it allows us to do things that we never thought possible. To me, it's like what we envisioned a future might look like. And my husband wants nothing to do with like any of it. And it's funny because he's a programmer, but he does not want.
Like,
I
I'll leave it
wanted to
at
get.
work.
Yeah, he's like, none, no smart anything in the house. He doesn't like to connect anything. If we order out, he uses my email address for like the food order. Like he wants none of it.
Oh, but then how does that impact you?
I am connected all the time, and I do so much virtual work, especially since COVID. I have been full-time virtual. And so I'm constantly on my computer, I'm constantly on my phone. I use AI. I like things that make my life easier because life is so busy. I love Instacart, right? I don't want to go to the grocery store if I don't have to. And so for me, it's like I'm going to do things that free up my time to do more of what I love. And I think technology allows us to do that. So it doesn't matter to me. I think it's only when we have these disagreements about like, well, are we going to get smart plugs or not? And I just don't even have that. We don't have that conversation anymore. It's just never going to
Right.
happen.
Yeah, pick your battles. Pick your battles. Yeah.
Pick your
I
battle.
think it's good to be able to have the conversation, but also to understand what your tolerance level is in terms of the smart home and all the different gadgets and the technology. Because it can also be off-putting at different times. Some of the funny experiences that occur when I go and visit my daughter and son-in-law in their household, just in terms of what's going on and the house responding, or the vacuum cleaner just starting up, and I'm jumping, and I just it's different. Let's just say that it's a different world to live in, but that's okay. I'm adjusting. I'm adjusting. So
We adapt, we evolve.
we do, we do, we do.
I don't have children, but my brother has 6, and they have Alexa right in their house, and they're connected, and it's so cute to hear like the little ones be like, Alexa, play Soda Pop from K-pop Demon Hunters, or and I just love that they can do that. Like we didn't grow up with that, and I think it's so incredible that they grow up and this is something that they get to have integrated into their experience.
In my mind, it just allows for there to be brain space to be able to come up with something different and better, because they don't have to worry about how to, I don't know, plug in or tune up an iPod or something like we had to do back in the day, or a CD player, or they don't have to deal with that. They can just say it, it's done, then they can move on to the next thing. That's kind of how I view it in terms of efficiency in the future generations.
So I want to talk briefly about digital boundaries, though, for both of you. So one of the things I'm a strong advocate for, I use my do not disturb. I have a wind down clock alarm set now. So at 10 o'clock, it goes off. And in theory, I stop doing what I'm doing and wind down for the night, get off of technology. I'm getting there. But I do try to set these digital boundaries. And I'm curious about what your digital boundaries look like, especially because you're working and Ronisa, you're consulting and you're involved in the community, and Tanaka, you're working full time, right? I heard you say, in addition to doing the podcast. So how do you set some structure and boundaries around your time?
We actually just had this conversation recently from the standpoint of the challenges with sleep that you have. So my mother just passed away a few months ago. And prior to that time, I wouldn't turn my phone off at night because I knew she was in her 90s. I knew she had some health challenges, and I felt the need to be connected. But since she's passed away, I feel like she's watching over me, so I don't have to be concerned about the phone going off and giving me some information that I truly would not want to hear at a given time. So I can turn the phone on to silent and I can be fine. And I can definitely digitally disconnect. It's important, I think, for your rest. It's important for your mind to be able to have some distance between all the things going on throughout the day. And it is important, I think, to have to just set the boundaries, even if it's mealtime, Dawn. I think there are just different times when you have to be able to concentrate on that particular activity that you're participating in at a given moment. So the boundaries are necessary in order for connecting to life, connecting to people. I think you have to set boundaries as well.
Yes. Tanaka, what would you add to that?
So I like to think that I am pretty good at setting boundaries generally, but you asked really specifically about digital boundaries, and I was like, huh, do I have those? So as she was,
Would you like for me to? Would you like for me to answer that?
yeah, I was like, I think I might have to lean no. We are being honest and transparent in this conversation. So yeah, I don't think I have any digital boundaries, and certainly since starting the podcast. And John, you can probably appreciate this because you said you're a newer podcaster as well. It's a full-time job in itself, and there's all these different elements, some of which I could anticipate, but so many that I didn't. And so I don't know if this is just for a phase or if like this is what life is going to look like if having a podcast while also doing all these other things. But I don't think I have any digital boundaries. And then I was also trying to think, do I feel the impact of that? I don't know. I don't think so. Probably. We all know it impacts us. I haven't done the self-aware analysis to understand exactly what that looks like yet.
Well, I appreciate you being honest about it, though, right? I mean, it's very hard to have digital boundaries, especially when you have so many ways that you can be connected. It is a challenge to do that, for sure.
Message me or Slack or Teams or Zoom or carrier pigeon, or like all the
I try to send postcards and written letters every few months to people because I loved when I used to get mail all the time. Nobody does that anymore.
That's nice. That's good. No, but if you decide to do it, you'll find that then people will respond to you in that way as well. A few people. It is nice to get something else other in the mail other than bills. Or now, and my daughter says, "Mom, we can do everything online. We can do banking online. We can order the things that we need. We can shop online. You really don't have to get up and go to the store." But I do believe that something can be said for taking a look at the fruit that I am going to be putting into my body. I don't want somebody else picking it out. I want to be able to see it, to feel it, and to pick it out and choose it.
I struggle with that. I mean, I also want to, but I also really don't want to go to the store. So I'm like, I'm just trusting that they're going to give me the best avocados they can find. And if they bring me soft avocados, I'm going to be mad. Right. So
it's a different world. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what I'd like to do as we get close to the end of this conversation is that I have 4 questions that I ask all the guests on Work is Third that I would love to ask you too as well. They are not difficult. They are fun questions. The first question is, what is something that it is easy for you to say yes to?
Something that it's easy for me to say yes to is spending time with family.
Vacation.
Mm, family and vacation, actually two of the most popular answers to that question on this show so
Oh,
far.
look at us being
Yes.
on trend. Love that.
So the other side of that is, or thinking about setting boundaries, what is something that you have a hard time saying no to? Donica, maybe it's technology for you. But
Actually, maybe because I mean, in all honesty, you're talking to two women who have a pretty strong no muscle.
okay.
So I was like, what could it? So yes, that perfect answer for me. Technology. Yes.
Now that I am at the age of retirement, I do want to have more of my own time. And so my answer to that is something I don't want to do. If it's something I just don't want to do, then I will say no to it. Don't impact my time now. I've said yes for most of my life, so no, something I don't want.
Time to say no. Yeah. So we started out early in the conversation talking about self-care. So the question and joy. So when it comes to self-care and joy and boundaries and all the ways that we can take care of ourselves, what do you do really well?
What I do, I believe, really well is light the candle, put the jazz music on, and pull out the book that I've been talking about. I'm going to get back to, but haven't yet.
That sounds lovely.
Am 100% an introvert. Like I've taken all the tests, all the assessments. They're like, oh, there's no variation here. She is 100% an introvert. And so I do really well with going into a room and closing the door, also lighting candles, and playing music or putting on my favorite show and just vegging out or chilling out and just reinvigorating my energy by being alone with myself.
I love that. That's also how I recharge. I'm more introverted as I've gotten older. Yeah. So then the flip of that for both of you is, where do you still struggle when it comes to self-care or boundaries or incorporating joy into your day, into your life?
Actually, I can honestly say I'm not struggling with that. Yeah, I don't struggle with that now. It's intentional. It's by choice, but I've given that up. So there's not a struggle there.
I love that.
Me too. I'm like, so in my 70s, it will not be a struggle. Got it. That is
It takes a while. It
We're gonna get
takes
there.
a
We're gonna
while.
get there.
we're gonna get there. We're gonna get
Yeah.
It
there.
takes a while.
For me, it's the balance of how I view success to meet the goals that I have for myself, for my business. In part, I believe it requires me to operate at a certain pace and at a certain level of excellence, yada yada yada. And so it can be difficult for me to then balance that self-care component because I know it's important, but then in my mind, I'm like, okay, but if I'm doing that, then I'm not doing this. And I need or want to do this so I can get up here to do, and so that's something I struggle with, that balance.
I think that's fair. And I think me too. And I'm redefining success to myself. And so that balance shifts. And what I think is a successful day or successful whatever has shifted and will continue to shift, I'm sure. So, as we close, I am curious. We've had a really great conversation. We talked a lot about generational conversations and differences and how we are open and willing to adapt. But I'm curious, what is something that you each are taking away from the conversation today?
For me, it's the reminder that playing is so important to me. And when I was talking about saying yes, I really want to be able to play more because what I have learned is that there's always going to be work to do. There will always be something that is necessary to do within the household, but there's not always the moments that we take with just playing and enjoying yourself just like a 5-year-old. And so I'm reminding myself of that. So when we talk about self-care and we talk about things that we enjoy, we talk about our own needs, I was reminded, yes, I haven't been playing as much today as I needed to. So I'm going to do that. Thank you, Dawn.
Well, thank you. It's a good reminder for me as well.
And for me, it's been an excellent conversation for self-reflection for me. I didn't realize that I didn't have any digital boundaries. And that I might be in need of a digital detox. So that is my main takeaway. I'm like, let's really look at this, Donica. Let's see how we might want to reevaluate some things. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate the honesty and transparency, right? And it's like, yeah, sometimes it's great. I love conversations where we have those aha moments. We're like, yeah, I need to play more. I could have stronger digital boundaries, right? These are all good things that we can take away from the conversation. But I want to encourage listeners to check out Raised by Her. I really appreciate Ronita and Donica, you both for being here and having a conversation with me today. And I'm so glad that we connected.
Thank you so much for having us. This was
Thank
great.
you. Appreciate it. Play more.
Thank you for listening to Work is Third. If this conversation resonated with you, be sure to check out the Raised by Her podcast, link is in the show notes, and continue exploring the power of intergenerational conversations. And if you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show, leave a review, and share it with someone who believes that we have to take care of ourselves and each other to thrive. Until next time, remember, work is third.